thank you for coming along, everyone. Thank you, Karen, for kind of setting me up a little bit. Because I want to talk about exactly what Karen talked about at the end of the talk, which is how we can measure emotion. What I'm going to try and talk about is to be a little bit more granular about happiness, I think. Because happiness comes to us in different ways, and usually comes because we achieve a goal that we have. We complete a job, in Pierce's language. So I'm going to talk about what kind of those different motivations, those different goals might be, and how we can measure whether consumers achieve them and become happy, or whether they don't and become less happy, and what that means. So when I talk about feeling the gap, which is the title of the talk, and maybe I should put that up, I mean the gap between what people desire and how they perceive their reality. And that could be in the context of the job that they do. And I'm going to talk about some data on from an employee engagement survey, where I'm looking at what is the job that people want and how do they actually feel now where they're working, and what's the gap between those two things. Or in the first example I show you, talk about what this means for brands. So if consumers have a particular goal from completing a particular job that they have to be done, how can a brand communicate in a way that makes it feel that it's close to that goal? It feels right for that job. So there's kind of three sections, but really two examples that I want to talk about. The first is the beauty gap. We'll talk a little bit about what women want from beauty and how close they are to achieving it. That should be of interest to at least half of you in the audience. What should be of interest to all of you is the market research gap. So I'm going to talk about data from the Asia Research staff survey, which was based on people working in market research in Asia. So I'll talk more generally about the overall data, and then specifically the last couple of slides I'm going to show you how Indonesian market researchers feel about their job, which should be very interesting. But let me start with beauty. Beauty is a very interesting topic, and actually if you want to hear more about this, and particularly for those of you who already have tickets, I'm going to be talking about this at Hall 360 later in the year with Facebook. So and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the country differences. And Karen was talking about scales for happiness. In the work I'm going to show you, there aren't any scales. There aren't any kind of standard market research questions. So the data I show you is based purely on getting people to pick images that represent how they feel. And then mapping those against a motivational framework. Yeah. So in this case, which image would you pick to describe the beauty you feel today, or the beauty that you really desire for yourself? That was a question we asked women across a number of different countries in Asia. I'm going to show you Indonesia because I know you'll be interested in Indonesia, but I want to give you some context. So let me show you the picture in Japan first. Now, these two lines, the solid line represents the desire, the ideal beauty that women want, and the dotted line represents how they feel today. Now what you'll notice, don't worry too much about the different parts around the wheel. Overall, the lines are quite different. Yeah, I think you can see that. So there's quite a large gap between the way that Japanese women want to feel and the way they actually feel. And in fact, if you take a correlation of these two data sets, it's around 0. There's no similarity between what they want and what they have. A little bit sad, maybe. They particularly want to feel innocent and cared for and caring. Those are very unique to Japan. And the biggest gaps are particularly in terms of love. It's a big one, and care as well. So that's Japan. How do you think Indonesian women might feel? So I feel there might be a bit more happiness in Indonesia. So there is a correlation of 0.9 for Indonesian women in terms of the beauty that they want, the beauty they desire, and the beauty that they have today. They're very similar. What you'll notice in particular is the need for belonging is very strong, the strongest of any of the Asian countries I've looked at. There are a couple of small gaps, particularly in areas of love and confidence. But overall, Indonesian women seem to be relatively more happy, more satisfied, whatever word you want to use, with the beauty that they have. Well, what might that mean for brands? If you look at some of the international beauty brands, and I've done some decoding of the advertising and the packaging here in Indonesia, you find that a lot of them tend to focus more on the areas at the top of this diagram here, which more relate to the self, the feeling of independence, things like confidence, like courage, like creativity. And they tend to be falling a little bit short in the areas at the bottom of the chart, which more relate to areas of interdependence, like care and love and belonging, which are important in Indonesia. It's interesting to contrast these brands with some of the local beauty brands, and hopefully you're aware of these brands, which are much stronger in the bottom area of this chart. So they have much more focused on areas of belonging and connecting with other people, and hopefully you'll see that they therefore feel closer to what women want in Indonesia, and perhaps that's why they're being relatively successful compared to some of the international brands. Okay, so that's a little piece on brands and beauty. And as I say, if you want to know more about that, I'm going to be sharing more next month. Now I want to talk about employee engagement. Are market researchers, people like yourselves, close to the job that they desire? As I mentioned, this is data from the Asia Research Staff Survey, which, as I remember, was conducted in December last year across multiple countries in Asia. Towards 300 people completed this survey, and quite a significant number in Indonesia, and I'll show you the Indonesia results at the end. The data I'm going to show you is really based on two visual card sorts. They took literally 1 or 2 minutes for people to complete. Completely visual, no scales. Which of these cards best represent, first of all, how you feel today with your employer and how you would like to feel? Or I think the question might have been worded, if you woke up in the morning and you had your ideal job, which cards would best represent how you feel? So let me talk first about how people feel today, or at least how they felt in December. I'll start with the positive feelings. So this is the sort of happiness area. What do people in market research feel? Maybe no surprise that knowledge, feeling smart, is quite an important goal for market researchers. That one I think most of us might have predicted, yeah? They also like to feel in control. But there's kind of very strong element of belonging as well, and some sense of discovery. So those are kind of the four most important motivations for people working in market research, at least in Asia. But I have to say there was also quite a lot of negative sentiment, a little bit of unhappiness with their current jobs. And the two biggest areas that come out in terms of unhappiness are that researchers want to feel smart, but they don't, or at least quite a lot of them don't, and they want to feel in control, but they feel their lives are a bit messy. Yeah, their job is a bit chaotic. So if we add these up together, this is the overall profile that we get in terms of the motivations, the goals that people have in market research, with these 4 key areas coming out, some more positive than others. So knowledge, control, belonging, and discovery. And what is it they want? Is there a big gap? Well, the things that market researchers would like more of, particularly, are more in the area of discovery and creativity. So essentially they want to do new stuff. And this is particularly true of people who are relatively new in the industry, who tend to want to be doing new things more. So overall, the correlation between those, the sort of what they have today and the ideal is around 70%, just over. But that hides some differences. And I want to point to one particular difference, which is when we look at what people's future intentions are in terms of work, whether they say they're going to stay in their current job or they intend to leave or change, then we start to see some really big differences in terms of this gap that they have. So for those people who are going to stay in their current employer, there's almost 95% correlation between what they have and what they want. So they're pretty fulfilled. There's a very small gap. For those people who say they're going to leave, there's a very strong negative correlation between what they have now and what they want. It's about minus 30%. That's very, very big. And let me show you how big it is. So these are really very, very different profiles. And what's particularly strong or particularly pronounced is that big spike of knowledge. So people who say they're going to leave, almost 2/3 of them are saying that they feel dumb. They want to feel smart, but they don't in their current jobs. If we compare that with those who say they're going to stay, I'll start talking a bit louder. You can't hear me. Those who are going to stay have a much smaller gap. I think you can see that visually, yeah? So very, very close alignment between what people want and what they have now. Sorry, did you all hear that? Anyway, so for those people who are going to stay, there's a very small gap, as we saw in terms of the numbers, between what they want and what they already have. Now, some people ask me, yeah, but is that because the people who are unhappy just have unrealistic expectations? They want different things. No. They generally want the same thing. So if you go into a job in market research, I think it's pretty clear the kinds of things you might be looking for, yeah? Whether you're in India or China or Indonesia. The difference is in how they perceive their current reality and what they actually are getting today from their job. This is where the difference lies, and this is what's causing the gap. Yeah? So how does this look in Indonesia? So last 2 slides, really. So overall, Indonesian market researchers are more positive than China and Singapore, but less positive than in India. And these are the 4 countries where there's sort of reasonable sample sizes. So but we still have about 40% kind of negative sentiment about their current job. So there are some gaps. And let me show you where the gaps are for Indonesia. Indonesian researchers want to feel more confident than they do today. They want to have more courage or feel a little bit more independent than they do today. They want a little bit more discovery, exploration, and feeling a little bit more individual than they do today. And then finally, they want a greater sense of belonging than they feel today, which kind of brings us back to where I started with beauty and brands. Belonging is a very strong and important value in Indonesia, of course. And this comes out whether you talk about employee engagement or you talk about branding. So, by way of summary, just wanted to share with you a little bit the importance of understanding the motivations and how those are the drivers of happiness ultimately. And particularly what drives happiness and what drives behaviour, I think, is the gap between what people want, what is the job they're doing, and how a company that they work for or a brand that they might buy is able to deliver against those goals. So for businesses, it's all about understanding the goals of your customers or your staff, creating a feeling that really matches what they want, and kind of making that gap as small as possible. So thank you very much. And